Hi, Jack Willard here. A short video, March 4th, 2025, the evening thereof, the night the Democratic Party died. Mark that on your calendars and see if I'm right. Also refer to Ash Wednesday. President Trump, the 45th and now 47th President of the United States, addressed a joint session of Congress at Capitol Hill. We heard prior to the speech that the Democrat/progressives would be trying various shenanigans to distract people, to take away from the speech, and to show their dissatisfaction. We heard about things like using clappers. Of course, they do that well with their mouth. We even heard about potential noisemakers, party noisemakers. But instead, they chose their paddles with various messages on them. One side of the paddle would say false, those kind of things. But the president was undeterred. And although the progressives lacked enthusiasm, the Republicans more than made up for it. But a little ways into the speech, Representative Green decided that he would try to totally disrupt what the president was saying. He stood up, raising his cane in the air. And it wasn't long before J.D. Vance spoke, and the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, began to read the rules of decorum. President Trump just stopped where he was and let the boys take care of it. He never said a word to Congressman Green. But he was reminded of the rules of decorum, which he continued to ignore. And the speaker called the sergeant of arms to bring people down to greet Mr. Green and escort him out. The Democrat progressives, for the rest of the speech, just stayed right there in their chair. There was nothing that could move them. No way were they going to show any approval or any kindness for what would be presented to them. The president did a great job outlining the fraud that Elon Musk, who works for him, has uncovered. The people of advanced ages, 120, 160, 200, etc. Someone is getting those checks. Did a great job in talking about the various things that had been funded around the world, listed them. Some of the things, he said, nobody even seems to know what that is. Nobody even seems to know what that is. But we do know what 200 million is for Sesame Street woke style in Iraq. This is a time where we need our assets here. We need our assets here. That's not to say there aren't worthy causes that we would be involved in around the world, but this is no time for nonsense projects. This is no time for money to be said to be for one thing, but it's really going to someone else's pocket. So he did a wonderful job, and he had a bunch of guests. He had the family of Laken Riley, her mother and sister. She had been brutally murdered by an illegal immigrant. So they stood up in tears, and the Republican response to them, the love shown to them, was incredible. Whereas the Democrat progressives just sat there. They just sat there. Even when there was a living 13-year-old boy who has brain cancer, who was supposed to die several years ago. Well, he always wanted to be a police officer, and he had already been given an honorary shield and uniform. But President Trump arranged for the head of the Secret Service to make him a Secret Service agent. And his proud father lifted him up high, and at some point the young man would put his arms around the head of the Secret Service as the Republicans cheered and applauded enthusiastically. And the progressives just sat there, not even looking at the kid. 20, 30, 40 years ago for sure, Democrats would never, ever behave that way. But what we have today, all of them, every single one, are people that have no souls, don't love America, don't want to represent their constituents. And I just feel in my soul that most of those people sitting there, led by Hakeem Jeffries, who could have stood up, he's supposed to be a leader. This guy could not lead. He couldn't lead a laundromat, you know. He could have stood up, faced that young man, and applauded, and others probably would have done it. He's the minority leader with zero leadership skills. When he speaks, you can see the scared look coming on his face, just like we used to see with Kamala Harris, because he doesn't really know what he is going to say. He doesn't know how to sound provocative and intelligent because he doesn't have the smarts. So he's trying to make it up on the spot. And he's always trying to say the American people don't want this, where all the polls say that, oh, yes, they do. And that an overwhelming amount of people disapprove of Democratic leadership. So I have to believe that's going to translate in the next election, the midterms, to many of those people that sat there losing their seats. I mean, the older women remind me of when I was a kid. One of my mother's friends always wanted to go to the bingo hall, so she would drag me along. My mother would. She wasn't really into bingo. But you'd see a lot of women there with their hair up in a net, and these house dresses with stockings rolled halfway up their knee and a cigarette hanging out of their mouth. That's how a lot of these older congresswomen look. They look about as bright, as intuitive, as compassionate. Well, probably the lady with her hair up in a net and the cigarette had more compassion than they have. These are people that long need to be sent packing. And then we have the young, snarky progressives who, as I say, have no love for America at all, no desire to find out, well, gee, what are my constituents? What do my constituents want me to do? I'm here to represent them. They don't care. AOC didn't even show up. She just stayed home and tweeted mean things via her phone. It's so funny that AOC wins re-election, but prior to that and after that, when she goes to a town meeting, she just gets shouted down. You hear the interviews in the street with blacks and Latinos often in her district, and they don't like her at all. But yet somehow she got reelected. And then we have the other members of the squad who need to be told adios, in my opinion. If you don't love your country, how can you represent it? What they want to do is take their culture and bring that to America. They want to take their, perhaps, Islamic country and bring it to America. They want to take their ideals, their way of doing things. So when someone like President Trump gets reelected, despite their best efforts through lawfare, through trying to put him in jail, but when the people stand up and say, no, we love President Trump, they don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to do with that. So they hold up their little paddles with various messages on there, but they are a party without a message. But really the message is very clear. This is not your father's Democratic Party. It's not your mother's Democratic Party. It's not really an American party, I don't think. In so many cases, this is a party that has been ambushed by a group of, well, they use the word themselves all the time, right? They use the F word, the word fascist, all the time. That's what they call Republicans. See, as I say, and I've said a number of times, if you want to see the real racist, look to the person who's always screaming, racist, racist, racist. They, and in fact, it's kind of clever when you think about it, they are the real racist. They will even try to use Republican talking points to fool people. But they can't fool people. Representative Presley is easy to read. But thank God for people like Nancy Mace. I haven't always agreed with her, but thank God for people like Nancy Mace and Comer and Jim Jordan, who are committed to getting to the truth. Such a wonderful presidential cabinet now. Love Tulsi. Even some of the people that went to jail for President Trump for 3 months are now part of his cabinet because they believe in him and they believe in America that much. Peter Navarro would be an example of someone who, rather than testify lies about President Trump, he decided to go to prison for 3 months. And we have Director Walls, and we have Pete Hegseth as our Secretary of Defense, Pam Bondi in the Justice Department, a Spitfire, just like Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary. What a refreshing change from Jean-Pierre, who just lied and who is not what America is about. It wasn't that long ago when I thought America was toast. I thought we were done. But God heard the crying out of his people against the unholiness, the ungodliness that the Biden-Harris administration welcomed in. God heard those cries. He heard the prayers. And so we stood in long lines. Oh, we couldn't wait for Election Day. We're going to early vote. That's what you do, right? You early vote. So we did. I stood about a week and a half before the election in a line of 150 people in front of me. Karen and I both did, because we knew that this was important. Nothing was going to keep us away from voting for President Trump. Was never so excited to vote in a presidential election. And in these few weeks that the man has been in office, he's like a machine. He's like a machine. Will I agree with every single decision he makes? No, you never will with any president. Bill Clinton, I disagreed with him, but he was a pretty good president in some ways. He left with a balanced budget. Now we just want to add trillions. Joe Biden wasted so much money, including taking money out of Social Security for his crazy progressive plans and to pay money to the Ukraine and to China because Hunter Biden was on the payroll in both of those countries. President Trump is looking to bring peace in the Ukraine and rebuild. He is the ultimate negotiator, one of our most wonderful presidents of all times. Donald John Trump, flawed though he may be, he has turned out to be one of the best that this country has ever had. So it's Ash Wednesday as I speak to you, and we can have our political views and talk about this and that, but it's really important to have a season, a time such as Lent, because that's a time of recommitment and renewal. I would say for most people it's a time for commitment because we never committed in the first place. Now, I feel at home in both the Catholic Church that I was raised in and the Protestant Church, being born again in 1984 while watching a Pentecostal minister. So I feel at home. I glean things from a good mass, hopefully with a pastor, a priest that is born again. I glean something from the eulogy that I won't get in the Protestant church that tends to do communion maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks, and they rush through it. No, I believe in the liturgy, consecrating the bread and the wine. I believe in all that. But I also enjoy a beautiful praise service, which I'll probably go to the Protestant church for, and a good message there. We don't just go to the Chinese restaurant, we go to the Italian restaurant sometimes. But in the scripture, it tells us that we are not to give up, but to make a commitment. No matter how old you are, you're never too old to not decide in your heart to make a commitment. John 3:17, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. He's a savior to the extent that he shed his blood on a cross for you and me. Very excited about the actor Mark Wahlberg and his Hallow Prayer app. He was talking in an interview tonight. It was just wonderful to see him, and he says, what am I giving up for Lent? Well, that's kind of a personal thing, what you're giving up for Lent. It really should be God who decides, because what we will decide will be like third or fourth down on the list, like something we could do without. God will bring the number one thing to our mind. But he said, one of the things I want to do is more. I want to do more. And if I start my day on my knees, calling out to God, I'll probably have a much more successful day that day. God is not a appetizer on the plate. He's not the parsley on the plate, not the garnish. We don't go to church to tip God. He is someone who asks us to present our bodies as living sacrifices, to at least be in the process of that, to be willing to do that, and seeing how we can't get a little closer to God every day. So Ash Wednesday was a beautiful service over at St. Joseph's, where I and Karen went with me. That was a very special thing to me. You have no idea. She received ashes as well. We sat next to our fellow classmate from the 60s. The school right next door, it's no longer in use as a Catholic school. They use it for various classes, for various groups. But the Catholic school, St. Joseph's, that we went to in the 60s closed many years ago. There's only one now in the city where I live in. But there we all were, now old people, both her husband is in his 70s now, and I'm about a year or so away from it. And there we are now in that same church we used to go to when we were young, the same altar where I served as an altar boy in the 60s. And wonderful priest and a wonderful message that this is not about a ritual. It's not about a ritual. It's about commitment to Jesus Christ. So that's my Ash Wednesday experience. We do a live show called Worldwide Ramblings, Saturday nights at 10 p.m. East Coast time, but we also do a Wednesday night version. So in 2 hours and 17 minutes or so, I'll be doing the Wednesday night version of Worldwide Ramblings. But if you see this later on, you can always see our past live shows here at the Virtual Church of the Disillusioned. Just click on live and you'll see the various shows from various dates. We hear from people from all over the United States, Canada, and Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Holland, London, Wales, and on and on and on. So we'd love you to join the live stream or check the replay out, which is available as soon as we do any live broadcast. My personal email is jackthefairguy@gmail.com. Jack the F-A-I-R guy at gmail.com. So if this channel means something to you, you'll notice a subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Hit the like button if you like anything at all. Hit the notification bell for notice when we come on, because sometimes we can just pop on to pop off with no notice at all. And of course, when we get a pre-recorded video up, you'll get a ding that we have just added something new. There's a thanks button. If you can hit that for any amount, I would greatly appreciate it. Great encouragement to me. So that's our little video. Mark this down, March 4th, 2025, the evening of March 4th, 2025. The night the Democratic Party died. Oh, I believe in the two-party system. We just might have to find another party, because the party that used to be the Democratic Party was infested by progressives, and they have absolutely destroyed it.